up and running. Welcome, welcome, hello, and welcome to Adobe CC Design. My name is Terry White. We're going to get started here in just a second. We're going to be talking about how to work with type and some type basics. So basically just all things type in your favorite design products. So with that said, let me go ahead and switch over to my computer and we'll get going here. Let me start one more window here and away we go. All right, we're live. So happy Wednesday, everybody. We're going to kick things off with some type basics, just some things across the board, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, some things you should know about type, and then I'll talk about some tips and techniques for working better with type, and we'll see how much we can get covered in the next 20 minutes or so. So Shane, what's up? And thanks, I'm glad you like my videos, and let's go ahead and dive in. So first up, I've got Photoshop CC open, and I'm just gonna point out just some things in general, and I'll talk about things that are kind of exclusive to Photoshop, and some things that work, most things will work across the board, whether it's Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, or most other Adobe tools. So happy Wednesday, Chanel. And thanks for joining me on Twitter as well. So with that said, I've got this document open. And of course, with Photoshop, this is why I'm starting here, because it is a little different than InDesign and Illustrator. InDesign and Illustrator almost work identically when it comes to type. Photoshop's the only one that's a little odd with the way it handles type, because it started out as a pixel-based program and type was kind of added years after the application had launched. So first and foremost, and you probably have done this, whether it was on purpose or by accident, if you just click in Photoshop with the type tool, you can begin typing. So I can say, hello. All right, and it will keep flashing the cursor until I commit to what I've just typed, which either means either hit a key on the keyboard or just click the check mark. And then in Photoshop, that becomes a type layer that's usually named whatever it is you typed it. So you can always go back and you can edit what you said. So I can say happy Wednesday instead. And Photoshop does a good job of remembering whatever font you used last, whatever size, whatever color. It remembers all those things. So the next time you go to type, it will just keep typing in that format until you change it. Now, if I were to go to InDesign, for example, I've got a blank page here in InDesign. It doesn't work that way. In other words, I've got the type tool. If I were to just click, nothing happens. Because in InDesign, you have to have a frame first, or you have to create one as you're ready to go, as you're ready to type. So either I'd have to draw a frame with any one of the tools, or just use the type tool and drag out a frame first, like so. And then I could do the same thing. Happy Wednesday. And then I can type all I want. There is no specific type layer. It just goes on to whatever layer you're on. You can always get back and edit it. You can change the size, the color, the font, and all that. And it doesn't remember what you did last. It just uses whatever your default font was for that document or for the application. In Illustrator, so that was Photoshop first. Second one I just did was InDesign. Let's switch over to Illustrator. In Illustrator, I don't have a new document open. Let's just simply do a new artboard instead. Artboard tool, where are you? I don't use this particular layout. There we go. Artboard tool. So if I go ahead and create a new artboard over here, then if I want to type on that artboard, I can just grab my type tool, very much like Photoshop, click, and it puts down sample type first. So that it puts down lorem ipsum so that you know exactly what it's going to be and where it's going to be. And then you can change that to happy Wednesday. I didn't give myself a whole lot of room there, but there it is. All right, so, and it does not necessarily put down a specific type layer for it, but everything you create in Illustrator is on its own sub layer. So I was on this layer. If I were to twirl that down, the happy Wednesday is this sub layer right here on the right-hand side, and I can turn that on and off. So each one in that respect does work a little differently. Photoshop are specific layers for everything you type. InDesign, it's not on a specific layer, so on whatever layer you want. You have to create a frame first. Illustrator, you can just click, and it doesn't go on a specific layer, but it goes on the sub layer of whatever layer you're on, and you don't have to draw a frame first. So yeah, they are different when it comes to that. Let me go ahead and just simply undo all that. I'm going to get rid of this artboard. All right, I don't need that. And let's go back to Photoshop and let's talk about some other differences or gotchas or just things you should know. So if I want to select that type, I can grab the type tool, I can go in there and hover and click and put my cursor wherever I want and type. But sometimes it may be difficult depending on where the type is to select it. So that you can also, if you want to select type, here's one of my favorite hidden shortcuts. Just double click on the T, not the word, because then you're changing the name of the layer. Just double click right on that icon and that will highlight the whole thing. So if you had a hard time highlighting your text in Photoshop, double clicking the T will do it for you, and then you can change it to whatever you want it to say. Okay, next up. Well, does Photoshop have a similar feature like a frame? Can I draw a box first? In other words, put my type in. You can. It's not called a frame. It's just really just a text container. So instead of me just clicking the type tool and clicking and typing, I will click and drag first. When I click and drag, then that gives me a box for my type. It gives me a cursor flashing in it, just like InDesign did. So if you want to work this way, you can. This way, my text is constrained to the shape and size of the box that I created. So it will wrap the text around accordingly. If you change the shape of the box, it will still wrap the text instead of scaling the text. So that's another big difference. And of course, once I commit to it, the box goes away, but technically it's still there. It still knows that that's in a box. So if I were to go back to this one and edit, I just get that single line. But if I go back to this one and edit, then I get the box again. So the box is always present. It does put it on its own layer. It names the layer the same way. Double clicking the T does the same thing, but just it's for constraining your text when you need your text to go in a specific spot. Another question I get all the time, and I want to go ahead and answer that. Oh, well, I'm glad you like that tip, Dana Pride. Another one that I get all the time, and this is kind of like one of those old hidden things in all of the programs. All three do it, but all three do it a little differently. And two of the three are the same, and one's different. Photoshop's different. All right, so here's what I mean. Let's say I take a tool like the curvature pen tool, and I click, and I click, and then I start getting curves like that. And I click again, I get another curve. Cool. And then now if I go to my type tool, well, where are you going with this? If I go to my type tool, there is a different type tool. There's the vertical type tool. So these are the only two type tools in Photoshop. But if I go to the type tool, the regular type tool, and I come near that path, like so, look at what my cursor does, or my icon does. It changes to that, hey, you want me to type on this path icon? So I'm going to click, and then I get a cursor on the path that I just created. This is text on a path. And of course, I'll talk about in a minute to do that. You can change the color, change the font, change it any way you want. It's just like working with any other regular text that you would create. You get text on a path. And the cool thing is the shape, the path that you created is a separate shape layer. So you can turn that off if you don't need the actual shape anymore. Now, I said that they were different. I said all three programs can do that type on a path thing, but they're all different in the way they do it. The difference is if I head over to Illustrator or InDesign, Illustrator and InDesign, you can draw paths. You have a pen tool. You can do the exact same thing. There's the pen tool. But the difference is there is an actual type on a path tool. And there's an area type tool here in Illustrator. Remember how I drew the box first and then I can click in the box? Same kind of tool. So the Illustrator calls the tools out more specifically than Photoshop does, because Photoshop only has the two tools, so one tool kind of does multiple things. But the type on a path tool is there, and that tool is specifically for, look, it's got the same icon, specifically for clicking on a path and typing along that path. If I were to hop over to InDesign, it's got the same thing. If I hold the text tool down, it only has the two. Regular type tool for everything else, and then a specific type on a path tool. So they all three have that capability. It's just in Illustrator and InDesign, you have a specific tool for it. In Photoshop, you just use the regular type tool. All right, so now that we know type on a path, we know we can type in a container, we know that these are all layers that can be turned on and turned off and deleted. What's next? Let's talk about just some standard attributes of working with text in general. So attributes of controlling font size, things called leading, or specific characteristics called leading and tracking. Let's talk about those now. So for example, let's say, I don't want to type on that path, but let's say that I want to, I'm on that layer, let's get out of that layer. Let's say I want to create some text down here. I'm just going to click and I'm going to type the word type. Now, it typed it in whatever point size and whatever font I was on. So if I want to change that, I hit Command A, Control A for select all, by the way. And then I can go in here and I can choose whatever font I want. People love their font list. Their font list is a mile long because you love having all those fonts, most of which you never use, but you love having all those fonts anyway. Let's say that I want to simply switch this to, I don't want an all caps font. Let's try, I don't want to use Afro, I used that yesterday. Let's try Europa Bold. All right, so I switched that to Europa Bold. Now I want it to be a bigger size. And it says Europa Bold, Bold, and here, of course, here's my point size. Now, of course, you can choose a size from the menu. So I want it bigger. How about 48 point? Oh, no, not big enough. Yeah, I can keep going down the menu, but once I get to a certain size, that's it. There's no more menu. 72 is the end. That doesn't mean I can't come in here and change it to whatever I want. So I want it to be 101. Now it's 101. These are things that you can do, but these are things I never do. I never do it that way. So, for example, can you do it on both sides of a path? You can do it on either side of the path, but if you like, for example, you want it like text to go across the top of a circle and then down below on a circle, you would do that as two separate circles because it's either inside the path or outside the path, but you can't do both on the same path that I'm aware of. All right, so the next thing is, let's say I want to make this type bigger. And I ran out of size. You saw me type it in. There's also this little hidden thing, and especially in Photoshop, called scrubby sliders. That's what I've always called them. And it's this little icon next to the point size that lets me simply drag left or right to visually do it. Oh, bigger, smaller. The scrubby sliders are your friend. You can just visually make it bigger. I tend to do it from the keyboard just because it's faster. So I can, for example, well, faster for me. I can do Command Shift and the period, which is greater than, or less than, which is the comma. So great, oh, hang on, we got to get out of this first. Let's do that again. There we go. Greater than, I can just, oh, okay, it's bigger, 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 bigger. There it fits, or no, it needs to be a little smaller. So I just usually size type that way. I never, ever worry about, Thomas is on the treadmill at Planet Fitness. Well, thanks for joining us, Thomas. Glad we're giving you hopefully something interesting to watch while you work out. So anyway, I've got my type sized, and again, so you can do it from the menu, type it in a point size, from the scrubby slider, or just visually from the keyboard. Command Shift greater than or less than. All right, so now I've got my type there. Let's talk about those attributes that I mentioned earlier. Let's talk about kerning first. Kerning and tracking. Kerning is the space between two individual characters. So these look good the way they are. I don't really have to kern them, but sometimes you will have a font that the minute you make it bigger, everything gets spaced out further and everything gets spaced out this way. So the bigger it is, the more spacey it looks. So if you want to control that, just put your cursor wherever you want to control it. So let's say I want the Y to be closer to the T. Then I would hold down the Option key on my keyboard, Alt on Windows, and left arrow keys. You know, yeah, up, down, left, right, the arrow keys. Left arrow key will kern that closer so I can get that type, the Y and the P closer. If I want the space between these two to be further apart, I can do that. If I want it to be closer, I could do that. So that's the act of kerning your type. And most people that are picky about type always kern their type. So you get your type kerned and tracked the way you want. Now let's talk about tracking. Let's say that I needed to say the word Wednesday one more time. Let's do it. It's nice and big now. All right, type my word Wednesday. Let's make it much smaller. Let's drop it down to about 24. There we go. And I need that to be spaced out more. Let's say I need it to fit a certain area. So I'm going to pick it up, move tool, move it over, and I need Wednesday to be spaced out as far as the happy Wednesday above. So I can go to my type tool, select the whole thing, and just use that same option right arrow key to track it all the way across to give that space in between. So that way you don't have to keep hitting space between the letters or put multiple spaces between the letters. You don't have to do that. Just track it to be whatever you need it to be. All right, so that also works in vertical. It's called leading. So the space between all of these lines is the leading. Now, Photoshop does this really weird thing, and I'm almost embarrassed to show it this way because it's done it this way for years. And that is when you want to adjust the leading from the keyboard, it's the same key, option, instead of left and right, up and down. But the minute you change it once, it puts all the leading back down to 0. So we'll bunch all the type up together, watch. Oh, and then it just made a liar out of me. I guess they did finally fix that. Well, it used to bunch all the type together. Yay, it doesn't do that anymore. And now you can just adjust your leading accordingly. So if it did bunch it all together, you would just space it all back down. But luckily, that's a JDI. That's a just do it feature that just got fixed. I don't know when. But thank you, Photoshop team, for fixing that. That was always embarrassing to show. All right, next up, let's talk about fonts and where you can get them and how you can change them and what you can do and what you should do and shouldn't do and just, I won't even say shouldn't do, but things that will make your type look better. Having this all in one font, one color is actually doing me a disservice. It makes it harder for my user to distinguish what I'm trying to point out or what I'm trying to show. Now, the tracking here makes it a little easier because, oh, that's something special. My eye should look at that. But usually typography is about contrast. It's about making things look different. So for example, we pop over to InDesign. I've got this resume. This is actually one of the InDesign templates. You can get this template for free. This is what it looks like, by the way. And when you create a new document and you look at templates, this is the resume template, one of the resume templates. I think there's more than one. But anyway, you'll notice the difference here. He's got the designer of this template has a nice light font for the name, a bolder font that's in a different color that's smaller for the title, a lighter font than even what's above here in the same color as graphic designer for the address. And this is what I mean by contrast. Just whatever that contrast is, it's contrast. Bold versus light, red versus gray, serif versus sans serif, big versus small. All of those different things help the reader's eye go through your post or through whatever it is you're designing. So in this case, all of these are this is just a template, but company name is in bold in all caps, so I would immediately jump to those. Responsibilities is red and different color than the rest in all caps. So my eye immediately jumps to those. There's a nice amount of spacing between each one. It's not too compressed or condensed. Those are all things that help your reader read your text. So for example, we pop back over to Photoshop and I were to say, hey, I want to make this a little easier on the eye. Well, first I wouldn't make it all red. So let's do that first. Let's change the color of maybe this. And I like the gray idea. So maybe we switch it to kind of a lighter gray, maybe something like that. Cool. And I probably definitely wouldn't make it all the same font and size and style. So for example, I might use the same font. In this case, I'm not, because we're not going to use that font. We're going to use one of the other ones I talked about earlier. Let's try Acumen Pro. And instead of it being bold, I'm going to make it thin. I'm going to make it just different. And also maybe I'd make it smaller so that it's not the same size as the rest. And then I'd, of course, adjust the leading accordingly. So just that contrast, that might be a little too thin, maybe it's a little too light, but you get the idea. It's something that's different, that's leading my eye down into it. And if this is the not that important part, then maybe I'd keep it light like this, or maybe I'd make it just a little thicker. Let's do that. So maybe instead of a thin on that font, maybe I do a regular. There we go. It's not as thin, but maybe it needs to now be smaller. And this is the kind of picky stuff typography or typographers do on a daily basis. Just making things look different and better across the board. So for example, this Happy Wednesday, maybe I would make that, since that's going to be the main thing. Let's go to the Acumen again. Doesn't have to be, oh, I like the condensed. And maybe I make that bigger. There we go. Because then we have the contrast of it being condensed and not condensed. Basically the exact opposite here. And then we have the thin, and then we have the super bold down here. Lots of space, white space around it. Just those kinds of things will make your text easier to read. Contrast, whatever that contrast is. And I probably still would play with some more different colors here. I'd probably keep the type there. Maybe this would be something different. And maybe I would play off that red and maybe make that not that dark. Maybe a darker red, something like that. Because it's all about the Happy Wednesday and type. And that Wednesday is not as important as the other Wednesday. So you get the idea. This one's in all caps, that one's lowercase, this one's bigger, that one's smaller, this one is condensed, that one's not condensed, this one is a different color, different font, different size. It's all about the contrast. All right, next up, let's talk about, we did leading, we did tracking, now let's talk about styles. And styles, and we're out of time, I'm going to end it on styles because styles are one of the most important things you can do with your type in any program. All three programs have it. All three programs work the same way for the most part, and that is working with paragraph styles. You can also use styles in your CC libraries, but I prefer using them in the application. So what I mean by style sheets or styles is that if I'm going to use, let's say, this body copy over and over and over again, I don't want to have to remember, oh, that's Acumen Pro regular 19-point sharp, whatever color that is, so forth and so on. I don't want to remember all those things and then do it over and over again. So what I would do is bring up paragraph styles, and you have paragraph styles in all the applications. So I would say create a new paragraph style just by clicking new with the text selected, and it will see whatever that is and make a style out of it, and then I can rename that style whatever I want. So I'll call it, oh no, it did not do that, did it? Did it not do that? Hang on. Should have remembered what I was, oh, there it is, okay. So we'll call this body, and you'll see that it remembered all of those things. It remembered everything that I did about it. What font, what size, what color, everything. So if I click OK, and now if I need to ever create body text again, this would be body text and needs to be styled. So all I have to do is select that and then just click on body. Hang on, I'm still losing myself here. All right, it styled it. There we go. I don't know what I did up there, but it styled it to whatever body's supposed to be. So character styles are for individual words. Paragraph styles are for the whole paragraph. And what did I do wrong here? Body Acumen Pro. I'm not sure what happened to my color there, but my color, that's another thing you should do. If you want to use that color over and over again, you should save that color as a swatch. So let's do that. It's already a swatch, is it? Maybe. All right, you know what? I'm not sure why Photoshop's giving me that issue. Let's switch over to InDesign. I'll show it here. So once again, let's say that we want to, this is going to be our body text. And we would make all the same changes, so same font. Acumen Pro, I think we did regular, and we did 19 point and we did 17 point leading. I remember those. And if we want to grab that same color, which I believe is this color, we can add that to a library so that InDesign can pick it up. So I'm just going to add the color. There we go. And now if I head over to InDesign in that same library, I've got that same color. There it is. So now we'll go to my paragraph styles, what I was trying to do in Photoshop and wasn't getting for some reason. But we'll go to paragraph. Not paragraph, we want paragraph styles. Sorry, styles, paragraph styles. There we go. And we'll go ahead and create that as a style. We'll call that style body. And it remembered everything, including the color. We click OK. And now if I were to go make something new, this is something new, and I were to select that paragraph and click body, it would restyle it just like body is supposed to be. So you would do that for all of your styles. So if this were going to be your headline, I just made the text bigger than the box will hold. Of course, we'll pull that box over now, or that frame over, I should call it the proper name. There it is. And this one would be maybe the red color. We can again go steal that red color, add it to the library. Okay. There we go. I'm not getting that color. Let's do it as a swatch. Not getting that color as my foreground color. Here, let's do it this way. Get out of it. Eyedropper, sample that color. There we go. And then we'll go ahead and add it as a text color or add it as a color swatch. It will sync in my library. There it is. I can give it that exact same color, whatever it was. And now if I want to change that to maybe Acumen Pro Bold and make that a style called headline, it's now a style called headline. And so anytime I need to use headline or body anywhere throughout my document, I can. So if I need a headline here, thank you, and I need it to be like a headline, there it is, a headline. If I need it to be body copy, there it is, body copy, headline, so forth and so on. So that way, also if I ever decide to change my mind about the style, I can change the style without having to go and find it everywhere I've used it throughout my design. So maybe the headline should be a different color now. Double click on the headline, go to your character color, change your character color to something different, maybe blue this time, click OK, all your headlines update throughout your entire document. So that's why we use style sheets, whether it's a paragraph style, a character style, an object style, whatever styles your program supports. That's why we use them, so that you can quickly go back and make changes without having to go and touch every single thing you've styled separately. All right. I love when things work for you, like they work for me. Yeah, sometimes I have those days, and Photoshop, for whatever reason with styles, was giving me one of those days. But hopefully I was able to demonstrate how they work here in InDesign, Illustrator, and they should work the same way in Photoshop, even though Photoshop was being a bear today. With that said, I hope we got something out of this today. We covered styles, we covered fonts, we covered, oh, one more thing real quick. How do I get these fonts? If you're looking for a font, or looking for a new font, let's put it that way, you got access to Typekit fonts. So there's two ways to do this. I can filter my menu down to just show me the Typekit fonts I'm currently using or I have installed. Or I can say, you know what, I need something different. Let's go to add Typekit fonts, which was the second link. And that takes me to the web. And if I'm signed in, which I'm not, hang on for a minute, let me sign in. Now I'm signed in. All right. Now that I'm signed in, I can say, you know, hey, I'm looking for something that would look good as Happy Wednesday. And then it will show me all of the various fonts with Happy Wednesday. Ooh, I kind of like the Suave Script Pro. I'm a script guy myself. I can click on that. It is in my plan. I can sync all. And now that they've been synced, if I head back over to InDesign, Photoshop, or Illustrator, let's go to InDesign since InDesign has been playing nicer today. And we go to search for Suave. We don't have it yet. Is that what it was called? Yeah, Suave, S-U-A. Oh, come on, why aren't you syncing? Did I not sync it? Dun, 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 dun. It should be synced. Oh, wait. I'm still not signed in. All right, now, there we go. Now it says synced. Let's see if it really did it. There we go. All right, so for whatever reason, it said I was signed in the first time, but I wasn't. Now I am. And there's my Suave. And I'm able to go ahead and just choose that font and get my Happy Wednesday going. So the advantage there, as you saw, is first of all, I didn't have to buy anything extra. Those fonts are included with my Creative Cloud plan. Secondly, I didn't have to download some installer, download something weird. I just said, hey, I'm looking for a new font. I found one I liked, signed in, clicked the sync button, and it appeared. If I were to head over to any other program, if I were to go to Photoshop, and I were to grab my type tool in Photoshop, and I were to select this, and I were to say, give me that same Suave font, it's there. Because it doesn't matter what application you're in, they sync. Even non-Adobe applications. Yes, I could even bring up Microsoft Word and type this and use that font. So it's not, Typekit is not just for your Adobe applications, although they sync and work great there. It's also for your non-Adobe applications. All right, how to delete an object in CC libraries. If you want to delete something in your CC library, all you do is right click on it and say delete, just like that. And then it will delete it out of your library and unsync it from your other computers. All right, and hello, I'm glad you're from India and welcome. Quimby. I'm glad I'm helping you with your Adobe graphics in school and your certifications. Great. And let's see if I missed anything else. All right. All right, I think I got everyone's questions that I saw. If I missed it, I'm sorry. So with that said, we're out of time. We're way out of time, actually. So thanks for sticking in there with me. I had a couple glitches in Photoshop, but everything else worked as it was supposed to. I'm looking at that glitch now. But everything worked as it was supposed to, except for the paragraph styles in Photoshop for some reason. They should work. Mine weren't, but yours should. We will catch you on the next one. Cheers, everybody. We will catch you tomorrow on the Adobe Students channel. Speaking of students, I will be there. Bye, everybody. Take care.